To get started on our vegan pie dough, we're going to first start by adding 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour to a food processor, along with half a teaspoon salt, 1 tablespoon sugar, and then we're going to pulse that real quick before adding in our water. We're going to be adding 3 to 4 tablespoons of ice water here, and make sure to pulse that. I didn't end up being able to film the coconut oil, but we did also add a 1/4 cup of coconut oil before this step. So make sure you add the coconut oil into the food processor and let that pulse, and you want it to be solid coconut oil. Okay, so this is how your dough is supposed to look like after it is done, and make sure you lightly flour a surface before rolling it out. You can use a rolling pin or anything that you have. Wine bottles work, or olive oil bottles work as well. And you want to make sure you have a pretty big sized dough. Just make sure you keep rolling it out so it fits into your pie pan. And I just let this sit aside while I made my filling. So make sure you cook some sweet potatoes before doing this. I cooked mine whole in the oven for around an hour so the insides were soft. And then once that is cooked, then you can add it to the bowl, the flesh of it into the bowl with some almond milk, some cinnamon and nutmeg. And then I also added some brown sugar, some white sugar, and we're all giving this a big mix. I made sure to also pulse my yams or sweet potatoes in a food processor before, so they're nice and creamy and not chunky before going into this mixing bowl. So make sure you do that. The exact measurements will be linked below, but in total we used 1/2 cup of sugar, so a 1/4 cup of cane sugar and a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and we also used a teaspoon of cinnamon, a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 cup of almond milk, and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch or arrowroot starch. I also used a little bit of salt in here just to make sure it had some extra flavor and it brings out the sweetness in the dessert. And then once we're all done, give this a good mix again. Make sure everything's incorporated, all that cornstarch is mixed in well, and then we're going to pour it into that pie dough that we put into our pan. Mine isn't as pretty as it would be if I was super experienced with dough, but if you are a baker, this will be a lot easier for you. Alright, so now moving on. We're taking our pie out of the oven now. Make sure you let it cool or refrigerate it before cutting into it. I waited I cut into it a little bit too early, so don't do that mistake. But it still tasted amazing, and I just served myself a generous slice with some pretty flowers on top to serve, and I loved it. I hope you give this a try, and thank you.